from any other thing?
No.
Naomi Campbell?
Yes, I do know Naomi, and I knew her before I met Mr. Epstein and the former President Clinton.
Do you know whether Mr. Epstein separately knew Ms. Campbell?
I think he probably met her through me. That I imagine.
And so, for those three, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Spacey, and Ms. Campbell, did they ever travel to any of Mr. Epstein's properties, the island or New Mexico?
Not Mr. Tucker. Well, not to my knowledge, Mr. Tucker or Mr. Spacey. Naomi Campbell may have.
To where?
She may have gone. Well, she certainly. Well, I believe she visited him in Palm Beach, and I believe she may have gone to the island, and she may have gone to see his house.
This is a direct character assassination. I've always said that I'm not a saint, that I am a work in progress, but I will not be held hostage by my past. What he's done is indefensible. And when I heard of what he'd done, it sickened me to my stomach, just like everybody else, because I've had my fair predators, and thank God that I had good people around me that protected me from this. I mean, right now I stand with the victims. I can't, they're scarred for life. For life. I've rubbed shoulders with hundreds of thousands of...
All catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TDJ, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all.
In conclusion here is that if the negative action of your neighbor, colleague, or even an associate can somehow make you guilty too, simply by association, then we indeed live in very worrying times. This affects us all. It's wrong, it's unfair, and it must be stopped.
Oh, baby. When Katt Williams warned that the entertainment industry was headed for a season of reckoning, where flight logs would talk, sealed files would breathe, and untouchables would suddenly look very touchable. Most people laughed. Fast forward to the DOJ file drops, and suddenly the laughter sounds nervous. Because every time another batch of documents tied to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell hits the timeline, one supermodel's name keeps fluttering through the paperwork like a couture scarf in a windstorm. Naomi Campbell. And the question isn't just whether she knew them. It's how deep the knowing went. The 2025 DOJ transcript between Maxwell and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche cracked the door open. Maxwell casually suggested that Naomi may have visited Little St. James and described her as having an independent friendship with Epstein. Independent being the word that set social media on fire. Because if that relationship wasn't filtered through Maxwell, what exactly did it look like? Then came the 2026 email batch revealing Epstein's interest in acquiring Brazilian modeling agencies, including outreach connected to Ford models, once home to Naomi. While the agency denied contact, the documents painted a broader picture of Epstein eyeing the modeling world as a pipeline to meet women. Naomi, for her part, insisted she met Epstein at her 31st birthday through ex-Flavio Briatore, claimed he overstated their connection, and said she was unaware of his crimes. She publicly called the allegations character assassination and aligned herself with victims, arguing that guilt by association is a dangerous road. But critics weren't satisfied. Accusers have alleged she was present at events, on planes, in homes, visible, adjacent, watching. And adjacency, in the court of public opinion, is radioactive. Then things escalated when investigative summaries tied Epstein's network to recruitment interest in East Africa, specifically Kenya and Ethiopia. Around the same years, Naomi deepened her ties to Malindi and was later named Kenya's International Tourism Ambassador in 2021. The overlap raised eyebrows. Was it coincidence, proximity, or something more coordinated? Online theorists began weaving timelines, questioning whether her mentorship of aspiring models doubled as something darker. There is no public evidence proving she participated in crimes, but the speculation alone has been relentless. The scrutiny didn't stop there. Kenyan creator Elsa Majimbo previously accused Naomi of sabotaging her modeling trajectory and attempting to control her career, adding another layer to the mentor versus gatekeeper debate. And then there's Naomi's visible closeness to Sean Diddy Combs, from affectionate birthday tributes to high-profile appearances, relationships now re-examined under a harsher spotlight as lawsuits and allegations swirl around him. Photos once seen as glamorous now read differently to audiences primed for scandal. Meanwhile, Katt keeps repeating that powerful ambassadors and elite social figures knew more than they let on, accusing Hollywood of selective amnesia. And that's the tension gripping this story. Naomi says she was one of thousands who took photos and crossed paths with Epstein in elite spaces. Critics argue that repeated proximity in rarefied circles stretches the limits of coincidence. Is this a case of association unfairly weaponized? Or is it another example of how influence can quietly operate behind velvet ropes? As more files surface and timelines are dissected frame by frame, one thing is certain. The era of shrugging and saying, "I don't recall," isn't landing the way it used to. When Katt Williams sat back in that viral interview and calmly predicted that the next few years would expose the entertainment industry's deepest secrets, most people treated it like another headline-grabbing rant. He said the lies would unravel, the gatekeepers would panic, and the flight logs would start speaking louder than publicists ever could. Fast forward to the DOJ file releases, and suddenly that rant feels less like comedy and more like prophecy. Because as sealed documents crack open and transcripts circulate online, one name that few expected to see threaded through the paperwork keeps resurfacing: Naomi Campbell. A fashion icon, a global ambassador, a woman who has walked every major runway on Earth. And now, unexpectedly, a name appearing in conversations tied to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The question isn't just whether she crossed paths with them. It's how often, how closely, and how independently. The first tremor came from a 2025 DOJ transcript involving Maxwell and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Buried in routine questioning was a phrase that detonated across social media. Maxwell described Naomi as having an independent friendship with Epstein. Independent. Not introduced once and forgotten. Not merely photographed at a gala. Independent implies direct contact, separate lines of communication, a relationship that didn't require a middleman. Maxwell even suggested Naomi may have visited Epstein's properties, including Little St. James. While phrased cautiously, the implication was enough to ignite speculation. Then came the 2026 email batch revealing Epstein's interest in purchasing or infiltrating modeling agencies, including outreach connected to Ford models. Though Ford denied any contact, the documents underscored something long suspected, that Epstein viewed the fashion world as fertile ground for meeting young women. And when you place that next to Naomi's towering influence in modeling, the optics grow complicated. No document proves wrongdoing on her part, but the overlap between his strategic interests and her professional empire has become a focal point for online investigators dissecting timelines frame by frame. Naomi responded swiftly when her name began trending. She stated she first met Epstein at her 31st birthday through her then-boyfriend Flavio Briatore. She said he was often present at high-profile events like Victoria's Secret fashion shows and that he exaggerated their acquaintance to elevate his own status. In emotional statements, she described learning about his crimes as sickening and emphasized that she stands with victims. She rejected what she called character assassination and warned against the dangerous precedent of guilt by association. According to her, crossing paths in elite circles does not equal complicity. She reminded audiences that in a decades-long career, she has taken photos with hundreds of thousands of people. The world she inhabits is crowded with billionaires, politicians, and moguls. Visibility, she argues, is not proof of knowledge. But the court of public opinion rarely rests on technicalities. Some accusers have claimed she was present at events and on planes, suggesting she must have seen more than she now acknowledges. These claims remain allegations, not proven facts, yet they fuel a persistent narrative that proximity in rarefied spaces carries its own responsibility. When people see repeated appearances in flight logs, at parties, and in social settings linked to criminal activity. Suspicion fills the gaps left by incomplete evidence. Optics become powerful. In an era hyper-focused on accountability, I didn't know no longer lands as cleanly as it once did. Then the story pivots geographically, and the tension deepens. In 2021, Naomi was appointed Kenya's International Magical Kenya Tourism Ambassador, praised for her long-standing connection to Malindi and her global reach. She had vacationed there for years, calling it a sanctuary. Government officials defended the decision, highlighting her ability to spotlight the country on an international stage. Yet investigative summaries tied to later DOJ releases referenced interest in East African recruitment hubs, specifically Kenya and Ethiopia, during overlapping years. The modeling industry has long scouted emerging markets, so on its own, this isn't extraordinary. But when you align Epstein's documented interest in expanding modeling pipelines with Naomi's visible mentorship of African talent and her deepening institutional ties in Kenya, the internet begins drawing its own lines. Malindi, known for attracting discreet wealth and elite travelers, becomes more than just a beach town in online discussions. Is it coincidence that her philanthropic presence and his strategic curiosity intersected geographically? Or are observers connecting dots that were never meant to form a picture? That tension between coincidence and conspiracy is what keeps this chapter alive. Layered onto that is a broader conversation about power and gatekeeping within fashion. Kenyan creator Elsa Majimbo publicly alleged that Naomi once attempted to control aspects of her career and later blacklisted her after a fallout. Majimbo described feeling isolated and pressured, suggesting that mentorship in elite circles can quickly morph into dominance. These are her claims, not court findings, but they contribute to a narrative that Naomi operates as a formidable gatekeeper, someone who can open doors or quietly close them. In an industry historically criticized for exploitation and imbalance, the line between mentorship and control is razor thin. When a supermodel with decades of influence introduces young talent to powerful networks, is she offering opportunity or determining who survives the system? And that's where the larger question lingers. Is Naomi Campbell a global icon unfairly entangled in the fallout of men's crimes simply because she occupied the same glittering rooms? Or is she an example of how influence within elite ecosystems can blur the boundaries between witness, participant, and bystander? As more files surface and more timelines are reconstructed, the prophecy Katt Williams made feels less like spectacle and more like a slow-burning reckoning. Whether coincidence or complicity, the conversation isn't fading. And in today's climate, silence is rarely interpreted as innocence. And just when you think the narrative couldn't widen any further, here comes another layer, one that stretches beyond Epstein's orbit and into the broader constellation of elite power. Because Naomi's name doesn't just surface alongside Jeffrey Epstein, it also sits comfortably in years' worth of glossy, affectionate posts with Sean Diddy Combs, birthday tributes, lavish celebrations, private jet snapshots, red carpet embraces. At the time, those images read as exactly what they were presented to be, two titans of culture celebrating decades of influence. Naomi captioning him as brother, praising his drive, his perfectionism, his spirit. The kind of language that signals deep trust and long-standing loyalty. But here's the thing about photographs. They don't change, yet their meaning does. In the wake of lawsuits and explosive allegations surrounding Diddy, old images are being reopened like cold cases. Fans are zooming in, not for fashion details this time, but for context. Who was in a room? Who traveled together? Who stood smiling beside whom, while rumors circulated quietly in industry whispers? Naomi was frequently pictured not just with Diddy, but with him and Cassie at international events, in Dubai, at private celebrations. She even hosted his 50th birthday party weeks before Cassie's bombshell lawsuit sent shockwaves through the music world. At the time, it was just another glittering night. In retrospect, some viewers now see it through a darker lens. And to be clear, Proximity is not proof. Friendship is not indictment. Yet in an era hyper-aware of power dynamics and silence, audiences are asking harder questions. If you were that close, did you know? If you didn't know, how insulated are these elite circles that decades-long friendships can exist without visibility into alleged abuse? Naomi has not been accused of wrongdoing in connection to Diddy's legal matters, but the scrutiny speaks to something larger than any single allegation. It's about networks, about ecosystems, about the way influence clusters at the top of entertainment, fashion, music, and finance. Interconnected, interdependent, and often impenetrable from the outside. Which brings us back to Katt Williams. Because whether you see him as controversial, comedic, or confrontational, he positioned himself as a cultural narrator long before these files and lawsuits reignited public appetite for accountability. His commentary wasn't presented as courtroom evidence. It was framed as industry folklore. The idea that powerful ambassadors, tastemakers, and gatekeepers often know more than they admit. He accused Hollywood of selective amnesia, of suddenly not recalling the same parties, the same islands, the same inner circles they once proudly flaunted. In his telling, the reckoning isn't about one island or one mogul. It's about a culture that normalized proximity to questionable power as long as the benefits flowed. Katt's role here isn't prosecutor, it's provocateur. He articulates what many viewers feel but can't substantiate. That elite spaces protect themselves first. That reputations are currency. That silence can be strategic. And whether you agree with him or not, his earlier warnings now echo differently in a climate where sealed documents are unsealed and civil lawsuits are rewriting legacies in real time. So where does that leave us? Are we watching unfair association spiral into character assassination, where anyone who stood near a scandal becomes part of it by default? Or are we witnessing long overdue scrutiny of elite networks that operated comfortably in the shadows for decades? Is Naomi Campbell simply a global icon whose orbit inevitably crossed powerful men now facing disgrace? Or does repeated proximity demand deeper reflection about responsibility within exclusive circles? The truth, at least for now, sits somewhere between documentation and perception, between what's proven and what's implied, between coincidence and complicity. And maybe that's the most uncomfortable part of this cultural moment. We're no longer satisfied with polished denials, but we're also navigating the danger of assumption. As more files surface and more narratives collide, one thing is certain. The age of blind admiration is fading. The audience is watching differently now. And whether this is a cautionary tale about guilt by association or a slow-burning exposure of systemic protection, the conversation isn't ending anytime soon.